Mazda, John, Ned, and Juanito, standing at the western edge of downtown Asheville, North Carolina, looking out in the evening sun, about 8 o'clock, at the mountains to the west of Asheville. And I believe the mountain just to the left of the telephone poles there is Mount Pisgah, named by the Indians, the Native Americans here. And that's the highest mountain you can see to the west from Asheville. I want to tell a story about Juneteenth and about my personal liberation as it relates to Asheville, North Carolina. In the summer of 2004, back in Chicago, my hometown, I had run out of gas and was planning my suicide. I was living in a co-housing place, and right now I'm living in co-housing at the Haywood Community Respite Center. I was living in co-housing in Hyde Park, which is the most integrated Chicago neighborhood. It's 50-50 black, white, and black people really feel at home there in a way they don't other white places. But I was planning how to kill myself, and I remembered the words my son had said to me a few years before when I had made my one huge suicide attempt. Dad, if you ever reach that point again, don't hurt yourself. Do anything else. Go someplace you've never been. Do work you've never done before, where you don't know anybody, and start over. So I did. I took his advice. After some planning, hopped on a Greyhound bus from Chicago with a little rolling duffel bag that I called my moving van, and moved to Asheville, and arrived here in must have been summer of '04. And second Sunday here, went to a church that's called Jubilee Church. It's a very progressive Christian light church that was a safe place for all manner of spiritual practice and belief, and launched my poetry to a dimension it never had before. Before I had left Chicago, a guy who admired my poetry but ran a sound studio had said to me, your poetry's great, but it's a lot of words. It's all words. Throw in some other kinds of sounds, even a clap, something to take it to a different level. And in my 16 years of performing poetry at Jubilee, I progressively integrated all manner of music, did a poetry concert for 150 people with 7 musicians behind me, and got a chance to say, these are words I've wanted to say from a stage for a long time. I want to introduce my band. So that was fun. So when I put a poetry book together, I called it Something Rises, because there's a line in one of my favorite poems where I say, when I give up, something rises. When I give up, something rises. When I give up, something rises. So the connection of giving up and something being liberated was strong for me. And there are 2 things I could not have anticipated at that point. One was that 10 years later, I would give up so completely that the voice for God would rise up in me and transform me and heal me completely of my emotional pain, which happened on June 26th, coming up my anniversary, because today's the 19th, Juneteenth, a week from today. And I also couldn't anticipate that in 2022, 3 years ago, I would be in Galveston, Texas, having been traveling for a couple years from Asheville, at the site where the Juneteenth phenomenon began. Texas was the place where 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the last place in the Union that received word that the slaves were liberated. So they called that day Juneteenth, and also the day of Jubilee. So when I was putting together my poetry book, Something Rises, I said, well, what are all the meanings of Jubilee? And I found out about Juneteenth. And I talked about that in the preface to my book about Juneteenth, the day of total liberation for the slaves. Yeah. So it's a different kind of liberation now. I've been gone from Asheville for 5 years, came back because of terrible medical problems that couldn't be helped in the part of Mexico where I was living. And it's a different kind of liberation because my body is not working right. And we still don't know. It looks like possible 3 cancers and renal shutdown complete for 3 months now. But my mind is getting liberated. And one metaphor I made a couple weeks ago was it's an altered state of consciousness. I believed in altered states, and that you can't find true freedom until you realize that the normal state of consciousness is just one of many, and get comfortable with a lot of them. So I've been saying this new state where my body doesn't work and I'm suddenly old. It's, if I remember to think of it as an altered state of consciousness, just a different state of consciousness, and okay, so how do I show up for this state of consciousness? What do I do now to be free and to continue sharing love with people at a time when I'm so caught up in physical survival? So freedom, total freedom. What does it mean for us? It means identifying with our Black brethren and their fight for freedom and supporting them and being there for them in a way our country is not right now, really backtracking on that. But they're personally for our Black friends, and then personally for our homeless and mentally ill friends who I'm hanging with my homeless homies in Asheville, and to be there for the unhoused and unsupported parts of ourselves too. And I exhale, and that's a good cue to wrap it up. Bye.